Welcome into Last Call. Kelly Stewart here. We have a special treat for you guys today. No John Murray. I'm sure he's hanging out in his office watching soccer or golf. But anyhow, he's not going to be back with us until March Madness, which means we're going to kind of mix things up a little bit. Plus, today's slate is kind of lackluster. Congratulations to the United States men's hockey team on the win last night, but no hockey really today outside of the one game. And then we've got the NBA All-Star break, and I asked some of our NBA handicappers to come on, and they said, Kelly, no, we're not talking about the All-Star break. So I said, all right, fine. We're just going to do a hybrid steam room version today for all of you guys just hanging out with us. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be me and VR for, we'll call it 20, 30 minutes. You guys dictate how long the show is going to be. And if you got a question, drop it in the chat. Give us a like. Hit that subscribe button. I know some of the college basketball slate is already underway, so I made the executive decision that starting next Sunday, we're going 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, because I don't want you guys to miss any of the action. VR, welcome in. Gianni the Greek, as you guys know him. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy Sunday morning to hang out with us. That's a little shade at some of the other guys, but that's okay. I understand. There's not a lot going on today, but the college basketball slate has some really good games on it. I know Memphis, Wichita State is already underway. So I've got Memphis second half already circled. It's been one of the better bets for me this basketball season. We'll see what that line comes out at. But if they are tied down at half or only up maybe 2 or 3, I will be looking at backing them there. What do you have on deck for this Sunday?
A lot, Kel. We've been, forgive me. We've been getting down. As you can see, same outfit from yesterday. It's been a long night. Great day in college basketball. Great day in the UFC. So I've been wired. I've been up very, very early, and a ton of action I've got from the groups I work with and the guys that I trade information with. Just going real quickly over those early games, because I know a lot of guys like to bet live, like to bet second halves, like you touched on. I gave out to subscribers. We got down on FAU immediately against Temple. We took FAU up to -2.5 and -3. Bet the money line as well, all the way up to like -175. So there was a lot of steam in FAU, and they were betting it multiple different ways. Also, under on FAU, I saw a little over money come in as well. So it seems like there's some resistance. But the guys I work with, some over money. Yes, we went under 163.5 all the way down to 162.5. I think up about 162, 161.5. You saw some over money come in late. So obviously there was a little bit of resistance there. And then finally, I know you're looking out for Memphis. Don't know how that game's going to end up at halftime, but we did bet Wichita State at +8. But it was bet up first from -6 up to -8. So I do know there was some sharp money the other way that was on Memphis at the -6 number. When they backed off, we came in, took the +8 on Wichita State. Real quickly, opposite of more importantly, the Temple and over, because they're heavy public money on Temple. Like they were getting bet at a high rate. I don't think there's going to be enough sharp money offsetting that, even though you see the market reflecting all that sharp money. The regular bettors, the recreational bettors, just kept betting Temple. They were taking the points with Temple. They liked them as home dogs, and they were betting that game over as well. So it's kind of like a sharps versus public situation there. And real quickly on the primetime game coming up at the top of the hour, I believe 1 p.m. Eastern, it's been all Ohio State and over from the recreational bettors. I haven't seen anything sharp yet. None of the guys I work with got involved in that game. None of the guys that share information with me shared anything that they got down with. And the market kind of reflects that. I mean, it looks like there was some over possibly sharp at 150.5. But it only moved about a half a point to a point because it was overnights and the limits were low. Since then, when it's been sitting about that 152 range, it's been nothing but over, pounding the over, recreational bettors, pounding the over and pounding it with Ohio State. I'm surprised it's not up to 3 yet. In fact, I think that's what most of the syndicates are probably sitting back waiting for. If they could get that Michigan at +3, I think that's the number they're waiting for. But so far, I've seen books add juice to 2 before even going to 2.5. Because I know some guys that like to buy the 3 on a discount. They could get it up for 10 cents, thinking it's worth 11, 12 cents in that situation. So it's going to be interesting to see between now and tip-off if enough Ohio State money pushes it towards that 3 or if you see the books keep that position, let all that Ohio State money keep coming in, because again, it's just overwhelming every time.
VR, let's talk about that game a little bit more in depth, because FanDuel just went to 1.5 on the odds logic screen. You know, my good friend Dan Livshatz tweeted earlier that he was going to be on Ohio State, and I said, nah, Dan, no, they are on the do not bet list. We talked about Texas yesterday and how I could not back that team, and even at 4.5. I wanted to take Kentucky. I was sitting there with Brett's mom. I was out for her birthday. We sat at the bar. We're watching the games, having a couple cocktails and dinner. And I watched that last second bucket go in for Kentucky to just destroy that late Texas money. And I thought, you know what? This is why you stay off some of these games. This game is no different to me. Now, I know these are hated rivals, right? VR. And I think that some people want to take that into account, and rightfully so. But here's the problem. Ohio State does not play to their full potential, right? You go on KenPom, you go on a Bartovic, and I don't know what power ratings you use. I know you have several sets that you like to reference. I think this team has been power rated too high throughout the season. I liked them, back in December, and then they get their asses kicked when I bet them against Auburn on that neutral court. And then they kind of just went like this and then dropped 3 straight in Big Ten play. And at that moment in time, I said, all right, I have either a bad read, I have bad insight. Something is wrong with this team. I know they turn the ball over a lot, and they get their teams, the opponent, to the free throw line entirely too much. They draw way too many fouls. And I don't know what to make of that, because I feel like that ranked versus ranked we've talked about so many times is the play. Yet it just hasn't been, especially in the Big Ten. So talk to me a little bit more in depth about this game, because I think it's going to be one of the better games on the board today.
Other than strength of schedule, which to date, Ohio State has that tougher strength of schedule, at least based on their opponent's record up till now, I think Michigan's just better on both sides of the ball. Offensively, I think they're better. Defensively, I think they're better. The power rating that I'm looking at has this game at about a pick'em, and that's factoring in that home court advantage. I mean, we know Michigan, these two teams, you look over the history, Michigan has beaten Ohio State at Ohio State. Ohio State's beaten Michigan at Michigan. So the home field advantage probably isn't as strong as if they were playing somebody else. But that's why I think that the betting public seeing, again, Ohio State at more or less just having to win the game, more or less having to do it at home against a Michigan team that's only playing their 8th road game. They're 5-2, one more games than they lost. But the home away for Ohio State is glaring. I mean, this is a team that's below 500 on the road, above 10-4 at home. But against Michigan, I just don't think that home court edge is as strong. You look at Michigan, looking back, these teams is more or less split straight up over the last 10 they've met in the series. But again, Michigan's been able to get the W at Ohio State. For me, it's a Michigan or pass situation, especially when I look at some of the square books out there where I've seen like 2.5s out. That the ones that won't book a lot of sharp action went to 2.5, which reflects what I'm looking at the credit shops that are getting the one-sided Ohio State money. But what sticks out even more is that over. Like, they just keep betting this over, and I'm not seeing it reflected in the line at all. In fact, it's moving up by like half point. That's as opening of as proof of that not being sharp. Because on a primetime game like that, if it was sharp, where that the betting public's also leaning that way, we know that the bias of the bettors is usually favored and over. Like, if this was a buy order at over 151, 150 and a half, 151 and a half, this would be up to 153 and a half, 154, because of the recreational bettors would still continue to be betting this game over. But the fact that they're holding strong at 152 tells me again that it's been nothing but recreational money. The books seem to be just fine with it, and it just keeps coming in. I did see it a couple sharp spots that did go to that 2.5. It got hit. They took the 2.5. Like you said, now you've seen 1.5 out there. Not surprising, because I do think that most of the sharp bettors are seeing it like me. I don't think Ohio State should be favored in this game. I think it should be a pick 'em at worst. And I just think Michigan's better on both sides of the ball. Again, Ohio State, well, they're ranked 20th and 21st. But yeah, for me, it's Michigan or pass. And I actually did lean under beforehand. if I get any confirmation, because I don't just I'm not going to fade the public. I'm not getting 11 to 10. I got to lay 11 to 10. So fading the public's not going to help you at all. But setting up against that, I got that circled. I'm looking for any reason to go under in this game because I do think it's a little bit too high. Should be around where they opened it, around that 150 and a half mark. But again, not surprising. Some sharps got probably bet that overnight over because they expected this. Nothing but over money from the recreational bettors, and that's what they got. Again, I like Michigan. I like the under. I haven't bet either yet. Again, just not going to fade the public, but that was already my lean. But again, the only confirmation I have is that I believe on the side of the books. Now, I don't know how everybody's book looks, but the sheets I'm looking at are all one-sided.
Sorry, guys, about 50 minutes until tip-off of Ohio State, Michigan. If you guys are just joining us, we're doing like a little mini steam room. VR does a steam room for his premium clients. Some Saturdays, some Sundays, depending on the sport, some days, both days of the week. And because of the lack of other sports going on today, I said, you know what? We're just going to do me and VR, 20, 30 minutes, get you guys some questions answered. So if you guys do have a question, please drop it in the chat about college basketball game today, anything else in regards to sports gambling. Before we get to Block B, I don't know. I'm really bad at reading these usernames. His question about player props. VR, I want to go back to something you said. So I've got my odds logic screen open, and we're going to pretend like I don't know how to read it, right? I used to work for Don Best back in the day. That's who made odds logic. Same kind of guys said, all right, we need a better odds screen. We were just talking about that Michigan-Ohio State game. You guys can also use the WagerTalk free odds screen. Just go to wt.buzz/odds. You guys can check it out there as well. So let's talk about some of the things you want to look at, right? And which books you have up, which books are sharp, and how you can get confirmation bias maybe without particularly getting the sharp information that you're getting, right? Can you look at the odds screen and say, all right, FanDuel's holding steady at 1.5. That tells me X.
Yeah, for me, like I said, I keep up the odds logic screen because I have it up to the second. And this doesn't get better than that. And I like to also look at it because they show the injuries, players being held out. And a lot of times I talked about that. You could get out ahead of the betting market. I'm going to keep up, obviously, Pinnacle, Bet Online. Here in Vegas, I'm going to keep up Circa. I'm going to keep up Westgate. Those are the ones that I know are booking sharp action. Chris, obviously, because they have so many skins, use Chris, so many sheets, guys that are booking credit shops are using Chris. So those are the ones that are key on mine right up top. And one that's on the odds logic screen that I don't see almost anywhere, it's Amapolia. Dude, they're booking some sharp money. That much I can tell you. Keep an eye on them because they're booking some sharp money. And it's places like that that you want to be paying attention to. More times than not, you're not going to get the good number there. But when you're seeing off-market numbers, I'm going to trust that side more than anything. And it's almost like the scalpers, guys that scalp. They use Penny to scalp against. They use Chris to scalp against. They're looking at Circa for particular sports, Westgate for particular sports to scalp against. You're usually going to use when you're middling. You're going to lose to the sharp side, and you're going to win with the more, not square side, but more of the credit shops, more of the off-screen books, more of the ones that are slower, the ones even that don't want sharp action. They're the ones that aren't racing to move lines because they're not having a bunch of guys or they're not allowing bots that are going to pick off any of those mistakes. So I love to compare and contrast those two. Like when I see a spot like Bet Online on a fight where we know they originate most of the lines, and I also think Circa's really sharp there as well. They book some of the biggest MMA bettors that I know. And I see that they're holding steady at minus 150 on a favorite. Let's say I lean the dog. They're holding steady 150 on the favorite. And I'm looking at the square outs and even some of the credit outs. And they're up to 165, 170. They're not afraid of that because they're not going to get any of the wise guys coming in and taking the dog because they don't allow it. None of the bots are going to come in there and take the dog. They don't allow it. To me, that's confirmation that, number one, the sharp books, whether they book dog money from wise guys or not, they are willing to take a position here because rest assured, if they're betting the favorite with the other shops, they're getting the favorite money too. It's not like they're just booking sharps. They may have, 1 out of every 100 guys are winners there, where everyone else, it's 1 out of every 200 guys are winners there. So the other 99 are probably, majority are betting that favorite as well. But if they're willing to hold strong, only because maybe they did book a little dog money from one of the guys they respect, to me, that's an automatic. Now, obviously, you're going to want to have those outs at those other shops so you could get that plus. Because again, you're not going to be able to get it at Pinnacle. You're not going to be able to get it at Westgate, but you will be able to get that better plus money from some of those shops that are moving up to that 170, that are reflected of recreational bettors. Because there's two things that move lines besides injuries, suspensions, weather. It's money and respect. And even though the public doesn't get a lot of respect when they bet a lot of money, the market reflects that. And that's the bottom line. We see it all the time when we get to the postseason. We see it coming up now in the conference tournaments and March Madness. So they will move numbers. And that's the best time. When it's overwhelming, that's the best time to compare it. Because when it's not overwhelming, when it's those games, those small games, Ball State versus Northern Illinois, the books already know it's sharps versus the books. Unless you went to Northern Illinois or Ball State or that's the conference you're specializing in, it's not going to attract much recreational bettors money at all. So even the square shops, they're just going to follow whatever's on the screen. You know what I mean? Like they don't have to wait for someone to go in and bet them like back in the day. Now they could just look at the screen. If the screen moves at the sharp shop, they're going to move it at their shop as well on those games that aren't overwhelming of public money. But the ones that are, they have a decision to make. Those are the ones you could really take advantage of. Because again, we always say zero in on those smaller conferences, zero in on the less obscure markets. But to do that, you got to be fast because it is, again, the sharps versus the books. But the more primetime games, the marquee games, the standalone games, those aren't the case as much because of the overwhelming public money. That's where you could take advantage of that kind of information. Because I know a lot of guys that love looking at those percentage sites and tickets and money. And there's a way to read that and help you a little bit. Again, any piece of information is good, but you can't draw conclusions on that. Like, I'm going to bet it just because I see 90% of the money, 90% of the tickets are on Team A. So I'm just going to fade it for that. You're not going to get rich doing that at all. But you can make some money by having sharp books and more recreational books and picking off those numbers that are just off. Because that's the only time you're really going to find it, at least for myself, where I find automatic scalps and middles.
You know, Steve Merrill said this yesterday on the show. If you're looking at the odds screen, we had somebody ask, would you buy a half point? Why? Just open up the odds screen, whichever one you like. Odds Logic, free WagerTalk odds screen is a slight delay, but it's still pretty good. And why would you buy a half point when there might just be a free one at your disposal? That's the number one thing.
It's almost always there, Kel. It's almost always there. And just not enough people are willing to shop. Not enough are willing to spread their bankroll out. So they're like, it's a half point there, it's all the difference in your edge. Your edge isn't that great. If you're giving away free half points, you just long-term, you're making it harder to beat. Like we already know it's hard enough to beat laying, with a 4.5% hold, it's hard enough to beat. But when you're making it even worse by not willing to shop for that extra half a point when it's out there, when you know it's out there, you're not doing yourself any favor. You're not betting from any position of strength. So again, you just got to separate. Am I doing this for recreation and entertainment? Then I'm just trying to pick the winner and enjoy the game, or am I doing it for profit? And if you're putting your hard-earned money at work, then you got to be doing it for profit. And your every action should reflect a winning bettor. And that's what a winning bettor does. I don't want to go long, but I say this all the time. The reason I don't have 40-inch, I'm not juiced out, like huge. I don't live that lifestyle. I don't deserve to look like the guy on the cover of Muscle Fitness because I don't have his discipline. I don't eat like him. I don't work out like him. I don't live like him. So what in my lifestyle has me where I should look like that just because I want to? It's just not going to happen. It's the same thing with sports betting. You have to look at it like, if you're chasing, if you're taking bad numbers, if you're betting for action because it's on TV, those aren't the actions of a winning sports bettor. So why would I deserve to win? Why would I deserve to be profitable? We already know it's down. It used to be 1 out of every 100 accounts had positive lifetime earnings. Dave Mason told me it's 1 out of every 200 now that there's sports betting is more, front and center everywhere. It's not as if the bettors are getting sharper. If you would think so, but that's just not the case. So if I know it's that hard to beat and all my actions don't reflect that of a winning bettor, I don't deserve the win. I'm going to lose long term. And again, that's just the bottom line. It's like the same thing with looking like the guy on the cover of Muscle and Fitness. If I'm going to eat junk, I'm doing everything wrong. Why would I deserve that? So, it's the same thing with betting, man. You got to have discipline. You got to be able to know when you're doing something wrong. And most people that are here watching this here at WagerTalk, they do know they should be searching for a half point. They know they should have multiple outs. We already know those things. The difference is, can you put what you know into action?
Discipline. Can you be disciplined enough to do it? You nailed it. And it took me a long time, VR. I mean, I've known you for 14 years now, something like that. It's been a while, right? Since my days at Don Best. And I had Kenny White, Todd Furman, all those guys, Brian Blessing, every single guy in that office. Kelly, why are you taking 6.5? You're going to get a 7 if you'll just wait. And those types of things take time to learn. And that's why I think we kind of just almost like beat it into people here at WagerTalk to remind them, and myself included. There's absolutely no reason why I don't need to be reminded on a pretty regular basis that it's okay to pass, because I'm kind of an action junkie. But let's grab a couple of these other questions here in the chat. The one about the college basketball. We'll get into St. John's Creighton because I definitely want to talk about that game. But let's go back. So VR, for people that don't know you move a lot of action for a lot of different groups. College basketball is starting to see a prop market come to fruition, right? Like I talked to Ariel Epstein a lot, and she's like, Cal, have you dabbled in this at all? And I said, I really haven't. But we know that books are starting to offer it. And we know during March Madness, there's going to be offerings, right? You're going to get it just like we did with the national championship game or some of the college football playoff games, because people want different avenues to get their wager down. They might not just want to bet the side or the total. So are you guys starting to see anything where there's sharp sides popping up in college basketball player props? Or is that just not something that the groups that you work with dabble in yet?
Until we get the conference tournaments, or more importantly, March Madness, I don't think you're going to get a lot of that from the betting syndicates. And here's why. The limits are really low. And most of the guys just aren't going to put in that work if they can't get down. A few weeks ago, and I have the link up. You guys should go check it out if you get a chance. I do a weekly podcast for the UFC called The Gambler's Perspective. And I had on there Brandon Whitmire. Doesn't have any social media, doesn't have anything to promote, gave us the courtesy of giving us some of his time. I could tell you with certainty that he's the most profitable sports bettor at Circa since the place opened. Like, that's no secret. Anyone in Vegas out here that works with him knows that. He has a huge network of sharp bettors and groups in all different markets. And what he told me, because I've known him now for a while, for years, and he said, where I'm at now is our bankroll's so big, we even have to wait now to get down later. Like, there's things we can't even get down on because I just can't get down enough. He's like, in MMA, he's willing to wait sometimes, knowing he's going to get a worse number, but now he could get down 6 figures, where earlier in the week he couldn't get down 6 figures. Sure, earlier in the week it was minus 180. Now he's got to pay 190, maybe 200. But he's willing to wait if he knows his edge is still great, or to get a bigger bet down. So the edge is smaller, but the amount of money he's willing to bet is going to overcome that, takes care of that problem. With that said, you can't get down on props like that. I mean, especially some sports that aren't getting that, like an NFL, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, which do even see some sharp bettors get down. You see player props. I share those all the time. But in like college basketball right now, I just don't think the limits are high enough that you're going to see the betting syndicates, wise guys like him, attack it. Now, there's specialists out there that are great at what they do. And I know some prop bettors that are great at what they do and make a lot of money betting these props. Study it, know the game. They have their algorithms. And whatever it spits out, they follow. He should have 13 assists. The market's 11. We're going to bet it. and those guys make money. Sometimes they even move the market, but they don't need to get a lot down. Like they're not working with the kind of bankroll where they need to get so much money down. And that's the problem. Like the guys that I'm now working with, it's most of the bigger groups that I get them in the NFL. I'll probably get some when the tournament starts, but day by day, they're just really not attacking them. Not even really the NBA props. I get a couple, 2 or 3 in the morning, Kel. 2 or 3 in the morning, get down, I can't even use them for subscribers. Very few times when it was maybe a TV game, a primetime game, I could use that with subscribers because it's so time sensitive. And more importantly, when these guys bet a prop, they're going to move it significantly because they're not going to attack that market unless they have very, very strong information. Again, I'm not saying winning bettors aren't betting the props because that's exactly what they're doing. But most of these big groups, the ones that are attaching bots to your account, they can't get down enough money to be blasting these college basketball props. So pay attention to the line moves, obviously, but it's not as easy like confirming that this is coming from a group or anything like that. Because again, a lot of them just can't dabble into it, even though they'd like to.
All right, let's get into this game. Creighton St. John's top 25 matchup. St. John's opened up as a 5-point favorite. 6. There's 1 5.5 at FanDuel, 6.5 at DraftKings, Pinnacle. So mainly 6-ish is Superbook, 6, circa 6. I find this game really interesting because VR, I kind of mentioned to you that I don't bet St. John's pre-flop. I just don't. I watched this team back in early December against my K-State Wildcats. They were down 11 at halftime, came roaring back to cover the 11.5 spread. Rick Pitino's got this team so well at halftime that he's able to make these insane adjustments. I think they've covered 9 of their last 10 second halves. I'm going to be on them probably at halftime. Let's see what it looks like here. This is a Creighton team, though, that has absolutely owned them. This one's a neutral site game there at Madison Square Garden. You guys seeing anything on your end? Because I think by far this is going to be the best game on the board today.
Yeah, one of the guys that I share stuff with, he moves for a lot of different groups, some that I don't have any access to. They took an overnight on that. They laid St. John's at -5. That was the opener. It got to 5.5, 6. He said we didn't bet it again, but we did get down at -5. I know 5 is one of those numbers in college basketball that they pay attention to. And they also went over. They went over the 140.5 and 141.5. That was reflected in the overnight where it got up to as high as -144. So these guys were already betting it yesterday. At 144, you saw some sharp money come in under, down to about 142, 141.5. I saw even in some shops. Since then, it's been nothing but under by the recreational bettors. So I think that the guys that went over, not only did he get a really good number, obviously laying the 5 and going over, but now even though some did get some sharp at a higher number of 144, which is a different bet, since then, that 142 range, it's been nothing but under money by the recreational bettors. Kel, I'm trying to look, I refreshing it to see, have they booked an over bet yet? And it's just a very slight few over bets. It's been under by the recreational bettors. So yeah, I was actually looking at that game to go over because I know his group does very well on those overnights. They don't manipulate the market much. They take actual positions. They have the kind of outs where they could get enough money down in overnights that they look for winners, not just to get out ahead of the market, then buy back the other way. So I consider them legit. And I'll tell you that now I backed off because I did see that sharp money come in under 144. But now that I'm seeing that the public's the one that moving it down even more, I'm sitting back waiting. If I could get close to the number he got, like now it's 142.5, maybe even 142, where I see it at one of the square shops, I'll bet it. I'll look to go over there because I agree with him. I thought there was some value on the over because of that real low scoring game they played the first time around. And you don't have too much recency bias involved where both teams are coming off having scored a bunch of points, but enough to have it bump up to what the total is. Because in that first game, they adjusted from the 151 because it was so low scoring, but I think they over adjusted. They adjusted 10 points from when they played. I get it was back in December, but that was just 2 months ago. and they scored 113 points. So they were about 37, forgive me, points off the total. So yeah, you're going to have to adjust, obviously, from that first game, but you're looking at a 10. He had an 11-point adjustment off that first game. And I think that's one of the bigger reasons they went over, because of the overreaction off that first one. And again, it's been an under series. You look at the last 4 straight going back to February of 2023. We're now in February of 2025. These two haven't played to an over. But look at what those totals were. They were 151 and a half, 152, 152 and a half, 151 and a half. So even though they were going under, it was still in the 150s. This morning, they were looking at an over 140 and a half. They were going to blast it. That made total sense to me. I just don't send a lot of overnights because I know a lot of my subscribers, especially it's a Saturday night, it's not fair to them, man. Like, they already have watched UFC. They bet basketball. It ain't fair. I'm going to get down at 140 and a half. They're going to get it. Some of them may be sleeping. By the time they wake up, it's 142, 143 and a half. Poor Missy and Melissa are getting emails. What do I do? You know what I mean? I don't want to do that to those girls. They're amazing.
Listen, I get it. You got to set your customers up for success, and doing something like that because you're on the West Coast. You're right. I wake up and I'm like, well, this number got blown all to hell. It's kind of how there's a blessing and a curse to it, right?
Yep.
And it is unfortunate, but we appreciate you always sticking right by your clients. VR, anything else? Let's see. Robert wants to know Utah State, New Mexico. So this is going to have some interesting Mountain West implications. This game will. Utah State, I think it is the latest game. Let me pull up the odd screen here. No, not quite. It is a 4:00 game, 8:57, 8:58. VR. Open 6. Now New Mexico's down to 5, even some 4.5s at FanDuel and DraftKings. Even Pinnacle 4.5, even though it's a little juiced if you want to take the points with Utah State. Your thoughts here? Not any game that I was going to wager on, but I do find sometimes these implications for the conference are always interesting.
I'm not surprised the line's dropping. Only because I'm seeing, in the back end, that's not a game we got involved in, not side, not total, but that was one of them I was going to give if we wanted to talk where I see the most money coming in, and it's on Utah State. I mean, and that's a later game as well. That's 4 p.m. Eastern, and they're already betting Utah State, and a lot of under as well. All recreational better money. And even the side, you can see it didn't move significantly. They opened 6 overnight. This morning it was 5.5. They went to 5, then the 4.5. It wasn't like a hit, like boom. I like those that where they have to move it at least a point. Now I get it. It's around that 5 that we talk about. But those half-point increments, more times than not, it is the books almost not wanting to do it. It's like they're being forced, because you even see here, they even added juice. They went to Utah State +5, like -115 at some of the sharp books I have access to. So they were just making you even pay more to take that dog, because 5, again, one of those numbers, but more importantly, because it was public money, and they're going to lay -115 if they have to, if that's the side they think is going to cover, the side they think is going to win. The number they got to lay, the VIG, doesn't matter as much, because if the VIG mattered as much, again, they'd be hunting down the 108s, the -109s when they find it, the 105s like Westgate was offering at a lot of stuff. They'd be in line there. They'd have the longest line out the door. So obviously most recreational bettors aren't really even paying attention to VIG. That's why a lot of these so-called sports books now that are charging, I see -115 on both sides. What are you doing? Why are you betting into -115 on both sides? That to me is crazy. That's like using 40-cent lines in baseball, where the one is -150 +110. You can't beat that book unless you're only going to be betting the one side, like always that skewed side. So again, not to go long there, but that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing nothing but under money and nothing but dog money from the bettors. The market shows that, so it's getting some respect. But I didn't have an opinion on that game. But that would make me look towards, again, Utah State. That's the ranked team going into New Mexico. So I could see why they're betting it. And especially there's some revenge game right there. New Mexico blew them out by like 20 as 4-point dogs. And they're coming in, having won a ton of games in a row. But also don't look at Utah State. Even though they've won 8 of their last 10, the market has priced them to where you couldn't make any money off them. Only 3 of the last 10 times did you get to go back to the window and cash your ticket, even though they won 8 of those. So it seems that they knew that was coming in, and the fact they were still giving them 6 and letting you take that Utah State at 5.5, 5. Get down to 4, and I'll look at New Mexico.
Right.
Especially not knowing it's sharp.
Okay, something to keep an eye on there for later on in the day. VR, appreciate you doing the show solo today. Anything you would like to leave our audience with before we let you go?
Yeah, let me give you some of the stuff that I have access to that I bet, and some of the guys that obviously win long-term bet, and some of the stuff that sticks out the most as far as one-sided money goes. A little later, they took South Dakota plus the 6.5, 831 Bradley plus the 6, South Florida plus the 9.5. I think that's way gone. And then Missouri State, 845 Missouri State plus 6.5. Totals, 826 under. Oh, that one went off in that Memphis Wichita State game. Temple also, and Detroit, 852 Detroit Oakland under 137, 840 South Dakota State, South Dakota over 171.5, and then that Bradley Drake under 130.5. Oh, also Youngstown State against, I believe, Cleveland State plus 4.5. And then where the ones that stick out, where the most money is, most with the early stuff, because when it's a couple games in the morning, they're going to stick out a lot. And it was on Temple. It was on Memphis. We talked about Ohio State and over. That continues to come in. Drake and over. I'm seeing nothing but Drake and over. Go down to the Creighton St. John's under. That one sticks out a lot. St. John's under. And where else later? Oh, yeah, Utah State. We talked about that. That one, see, it just keeps sticking out. And then the over in Iowa, Maryland. I think the line should reflect that one because I saw that in some sharp accounts, but it wasn't overnight. And this is a group that does a lot of middle, so I didn't even want to share that with you guys. And finally, the under in that final game of the day, Valpo and Evansville, under. So there's some totals that the recreational bettors are attacking big time, and I don't see any sharp money on them. So if the line's reflected, again, I don't have access to all of it, but if it isn't, then you could tell it's mostly just public money coming in.
All right, guys, you guys can check out VR on WagerTalk today during the week. You can also check him out every single Saturday and Sunday right here on Last Call. Premium subscribers get access to his Steam Room. VR, do you want to tell everybody about the Blackjack seminar you have coming up?
Running a dry run this week with Gianni because I want to make sure it's set up exactly how it should be set up so everyone's able to get the most out of it. I'm so excited for it, Kel, because so much is going to cross over to sports betting. And that's what changed me. If it didn't happen for me in blackjack, I would have never been able to finally manage my risk correctly in sports because I saw in blackjack real time. We always talk about the long term. And with sports betting, it takes a while to see the long term. But in blackjack, again, I'll teach my guys. The goal is to play one-on-one with a dealer. The goal is to find a fast dealer that could put you between 150, 200 hands an hour. In 4 hours, you're getting 600 to 800 hands. And you could just do a 4-hour session. In 7 days, you're getting close to 3,000 bets. In a month, you're getting how many? Over 10,000 bets? That's the long term. And I saw that as long as I made the right move every time, because there's only 4 choices you have. Hit, stand, double down, and split. That's all you have to do. Just those 4 choices is all you have, A, B, C, or D. As long as you did the exact move you should make based on the math, and you bet size based on your edge or lack of one, there's nothing they could do about it. You're going to take their money. And I can't wait to show them exactly how to do it. Again, I got tired of more or less not being able to play, and I'd love to arm as many people as possible, especially now casino is just a mile away from where most people live. Tell them exactly what games to attack, exactly how to attack them. And as long as they practice it, because you got to master it, I could teach you it, give you the blueprint, but you're going to have to put in the hours of work. You will be the favorite against the casino every time you walk in there and sit down at a blackjack table. You may not beat them every session, but I promise you, if you learn what I'm going to teach you, you will be the favorite every single time. And there's absolutely nothing they can do about it but back you off from playing, because it's the only game on the casino floor that has memory. Like, best example, you're playing double deck. The first hand, 6 aces come out. You know what your chances of hitting a blackjack are the rest of the shoe, right? You only got 2 aces left in there. So it's very, very slim. No other game can tell you that. They could have 18 reds in a row. It doesn't mean a black's coming out. They could roll so many 7s in a row. Another 7 could be rolled at the dice table. But in blackjack, memory is why that game's beatable. But the key is finding the right games, because they're trying to destroy it by changing the odds on blackjack and using continuous shuffle rather than that automatic shuffle. We could deal with putting it in a machine where they shuffle it for you, but not where they're doing that continuous and just shuffling cards into those, jamming them into those machines. Luckily, there's still enough games you could beat. So join me for that. And if you're with me for the year, you get that for free already. So it's like you either get the blackjack for free or the year of gold for free, because we're up for 2025. I told you when this is more pressure on me than ever before, and I love it. Coming off only my second losing year. Join us for that. It'll be up and running within 2 weeks. And again, we're going to have a lot of fun learning how to beat these casinos in blackjack. And I can't wait to hear the stories. And if you're with me for the year and you come to Vegas, I'll come stand behind you, watch you play for at least an hour, take you to lunch, critique your play, tell you where I think you need to improve, or maybe you're perfect enough that I'll bankroll you. Who knows? And we'll take it from there.
He is Gianni the Greek, at Greek_gambler on Instagram and X, and at Greek_gambler7 on TikTok. He does a ton of free stuff over there for you guys as well. VR, again, thank you for running the show solo with me today. You always provide a lot of great insight. As VR likes to say, guys, I hope you do some damage today. Cash them, don't trash them, and we'll see you guys next week.